We've had a couple days to digest that Nebraska needs another new defensive coordinator. But what comes next?
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good morning, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network, your team every day. And this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, FanDuel.com. Head there, place your NFL live bets all season long.
All right, welcome in. I'm Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Counter Happer of 1620 The Zone is with me. You've found the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Today's signing day, right off the top. We'll spend a few minutes on that, 2 or 3. Nebraska signing a class of 10 players today on this first Wednesday of December. It is the smallest and lowest rated class that you will find in recent Nebraska history. And the smallest part is by design. This is what Nebraska intended to do to get an older roster in 2026. You will see Nebraska make a lot more noise in the transfer portal next month than it is making today on signing day. The lowest rated part is a reflection of the fact that there are very few players in the class. And that's how the rankings are largely determined, is on the cumulative effect of the star ratings. There is a 5-star cornerback, 4 or 5-star, high 4-star, 5-star, whatever you want, however you want to call him, Danny Odom out of Orlando. So that is good for Nebraska. Some offensive line talent, some new young offensive linemen to put into the pipeline. Nebraska did add late a commitment and now the signature of Michael Sarakizis. He is a kicker from Australia. Yeah, whoa. A scholarship kicker added to the list from Pro Kick. So Archie's getting a friend. That's the headline there. And Nebraska will have Aussies kicking and punting the ball moving ahead, or at least Sarakizis will be in contention for that. So I think that's about it. I think that's about all there is to say on signing day this year. Jace Reynolds, the local Elkhorn North linebacker, is in the group. Claude Mpuma from Chicago is highly rated offensive lineman. You have Larry Miles, wide receiver in the mold of Ja'Cory Barney and Cortez Mills, who's coming from South Florida. Jamal Rhule, running back from the state of North Carolina, is considered to be a good sign for Nebraska. So there you go. Anything you'd like to add about signing day before we move on?
Not really. No. It's nice to see the 5-star guy at the top. So hopefully that works out. But yep, smaller class with the amount of people you think are going to be leaving the door. So not a whole lot to get excited about as far as the depth of the class or anything like that.
All right, let's talk more about the news of the week. So John Butler was fired on Monday. I think you all know that by now. He was absolutely not the worst defensive coordinator that we've seen come through Lincoln, but he may have been the defensive coordinator outside of the infamous Bob Diaco, who was afforded the least amount of time to falter in his position. So this is going to be a fast and furious. We might be in a little bit of a quiet pocket here at the start of December, but it's going to be, and there'll be some of those, and then there'll be times where the news heats up as portal entries are previewed or other coaching moves occur. So let's ask this question, and we'll spend a few minutes on this. What's going to be the next thing to happen? What's going to be the next shoe to drop? And shoe to drop is generally a term with a negative connotation. This could be a positive thing. This could be Nebraska hiring a notable defensive coordinator that gets people all fired up, or it could be what December often brings, and that is jarring news of a player or coach moving on. What do we expect, or what could be the next thing to happen?
Yeah, I think it'll be, the next thing, it's so hard to tell, but the next 3 weeks will basically just kind of be up and down and up and down and up and down. You know, you'll hear about guys going into the portal who are, you know, going to be interested in Nebraska coming in the other side. You'll hear about guys going into the portal from Nebraska side that you're like, no, I don't want that guy to go into the portal. I think there will be some coaches on the staff who move on to other jobs. I think you're probably in that like period of time. You know, after the initial meetings after the season, that was, you know, the move that Rhule made is the one, at least right now. And now you're in the, all right, let's see if, you know, anybody else is looking, or if anybody else has kind of been told to look, one of those things. So I think there'll be a little bit of that. And then it'll be fascinating to see how Rhule sort of replaces those guys, and if there needs to be like this sort of like restructure or anything like that, and how they do the staff. So it'll be up and down and up and down. It's just so hard to see like what happened. I don't think Nebraska seems very close to bringing in a new defensive coordinator at this time. I don't think we're that far down that road at this point. So it probably feels like more exits before we get to the, you know, bringing in part.
You certainly would want to bring in a new defensive coordinator by the time the portal is open in early January, because the players who are looking at your school on the defensive side are going to want to know who's calling the plays, what the system is, what his history looks like, and what the assistant coaches underneath him, what the shape of and the complexion of that staff is going to be. So you can't wait too long on this. And I think part of the reason, and we discussed this early in the week on the pod, part of the reason that Matt Rhule acted so decisively in making the move with Butler on the first Monday of the offseason was because he knew that if he didn't act fast, then he would run himself out of the chance to be able to get in on the top candidates that exist in this defensive coordinator pool of coaches. So
but there's also like so much going on where staffs are moving and coordinators are taking head coach jobs around so like, you know, timing is really important. So like you said, it's important, I think, for Nebraska to at least be in that pool right now before the pool closes, you know, and it's adult only time, or whatever analogy you want to make. I don't.
The whistle blows and all the kids have to get out. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
I've been talking to people, you know, in college football around Nebraska over the past 48 hours. It's been about 48 hours as we're taping this since Butler was fired. And, you know, a couple of the names that are intriguing to me that continue to come up. One, Justin Wilcox, the former head coach at Cal, he's going to get a good job. It might be a G5 head coaching job. It might be a premier defensive coordinator job. Then another one that I've just heard conversation about, speculation, he has a job, is Tim Banks, the defensive coordinator at Tennessee. He's been there a while, has some Big Ten experience, has a connection with Mike Eckler, and isn't necessarily in the greatest position at Tennessee right now after a long run there. Did help take the Vols to the college football playoff a year ago right now, and was without some of the top players in the secondary on that defense this year because of injury. Tennessee, you know, is kind of like Nebraska in that it's coming off of a season that ended on a bad note, had higher expectations going in. And if you're Josh Heupel, who's been in position longer than Matt Rhule, so the longer you're there, the less the patience exists, even if you went to the playoff 12 months ago, is under some pressure to do something here. And it doesn't look like Tim Banks is getting fired, but it's kind of one of those spots where if he gets up and moves to like a parallel spot, SEC to Big Ten, program with a lot of money to program with a lot of money, that might be viewed as a good thing for Josh Heupel. So that one checks some boxes. Continue to watch that, and if it is something like that, then I could see it happening relatively fast. I could see that hire, the DC hire, being the next shoe to drop, or it could be a key player going into the portal. That's probably all said. The most likely thing that happens next that makes big waves for Nebraska is that a key player, I'm not saying Dylan Raiola, but a key player goes into the portal, or Emmett Johnson comes back home after a few days in Minneapolis. The Huskers are not practicing this week. In fact, after today, the coaches, it'll be about the only time for since July that they've been given some free reign to go take care of whatever they need to take care of for the rest of this week. But bowl practices and prep work for that will start in some way next week after Nebraska learns of its bowl fate on Sunday. But so if Emmett Johnson mentioned perhaps going home after the Iowa game to have discussions with his family, I would think fairly soon he'll come to a resolution about what he wants to do, not just in the spring, but also for the bowl game. So that could be the next shoe to drop.
Yeah, I think one thing that is starting to clear up. The picture is starting to clear up a little bit. It's not crystal clear yet, but as you continue to hear names for the defensive coordinator position, you kind of get the picture that Nebraska is, and Matt Rhule is seemingly casting his net out, wide here. That this does not feel like a promote from within. Get somebody from the Rhule tree, obvious type of situation. So I think that's one thing that we may have learned over the first couple days of this. Doesn't have to exactly end up that way, but the names you keep hearing are not inside that box. So, maybe, that points to Rhule sort of letting off the reins a little bit defensively or whatever it might mean. I think there's, based on who the name is when it happens, I think there's a lot of sort of assumptions that you can make off of that. But I guess we'll see what happens when they get there.
One name that I brought up in this situation, only because of the connection to Matt Rhule and how this coach was regarded a year ago, 2 years ago, Elijah Robinson was in the news on Tuesday. He was the Syracuse defensive coordinator, coaches for Fran Brown, who's part of the Rhule tree. Fran Brown came a couple years ago from Georgia to take over the Syracuse program. They had a 3-9 season this year. And Elijah Robinson, who came to Syracuse from Texas A&M, was demoted at Syracuse to D-line coach and co-defensive coordinator. Now, if Elijah Robinson is not happy with that move and would like to be in a similar position at Nebraska, I think Matt Rhule would take him. Not the defensive coordinator coming off a 3-9 season. I don't think Matt Rhule is going to go looking for maybe a future defensive coordinator. Who knows? But he's got to build things back up. Yeah. If Nebraska is in fact looking for a defensive line coach that it can pay well here in this coaching cycle, and I think it will be, just because there's going to be big change on the defensive staff. That's something to watch down the road.
Yep. So we'll continue to sort of speculate a little bit and connect dots when we return here on the Locked On Nebraska podcast. But first, a word from FanDuel, where the NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the association. So even if you miss the start of the game, ride the hot hand, whatever you want to do, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who might score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you could even combine those live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. I will also mention that football is alive and well as we get closer and closer to the playoff and the NFL playoffs as well. So right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet hits. So head to FanDuel.com, sign up today, play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, welcome back, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen of the day, and thanks for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. All right, so anything else you want to clean up on that previous conversation before we kind of move it on to the next thing here?
I think we can move on. Yeah, I think we covered it. Next thing to happen, most likely will be transfer portal news, and the transfer portal news in December for every team out there is going to be a little bit scary, because the
Yep.
the good stuff, if you're a fan of a college football team, doesn't really happen until January, very, very quickly in January. You might think that a player is headed your way in December, but that stuff won't come totally into focus until next month, which is a big change from college football a year ago at this time.
So Matt Rhule will have a press conference today for National Signing Day. By the way, we're taping this morning here. It's in the 8 o'clock hour right now as we speak. There's some reports coming out that Nebraska is some transfer portal intention announcements. One floating out there right now is Caden Vermas, according to Pete Nakos, apparently of On 3. So, and I had to make sure it was Pete Nakos, not Pete Nokos from No 3 Sports.
Yes.
So,
I don't think that Pete Nokos from No 3 Sports would be tweeting about Caden Vermas, but
probably not.
You never know. You absolutely never know. My daughter this week, she'll be mad. She probably won't hear this, although I think she listens to the pod. She's very aware of what's going on in the world of sports, and she was convinced from reading on, I believe, on No 3 Sports, that Whit Weeks, the LSU linebacker who is romantically entwined with the Kiffin family, was entering the transfer portal after Lane's hiring at LSU. That's not real. That's not happening. She figured it out in an hour or so.
Just got to squint a little bit and make sure the letters are in the right order.
Caden Vermas, Omaha kid, safety, redshirted this year at Nebraska. Okay, that's not one. The next shoe to drop. Yeah, that's not what we're talking about.
That is not what we're. All of this built toward Caden Vermas entering the transfer portal. No, I don't think so. But Rhule will have a press conference today, and he usually comes out and has a narrative that he wants to dispel, or a something that he wants to say. And so I wonder what that might be.
Yeah, and that's not a surprise. Like, there'll probably be some announcements like that this week with players who, and I don't know if this was the case with Caden Vermas. I had not heard that, like, he was in line to be a starting defensive back next year. And I think based on this possible news, that he probably was in a position where it was going to be a long road for him to get to the top of the depth chart. And that's what happens in the exit interviews that Rhule has been started conducting early this week with players. And he talks with them about their outlook for playing time. And that will lead some players to immediately then declare their intentions or determine their intentions about the portal.
Yeah, it's the only way you could do it. And you tell them at the end of the season, here's where you're at. Here's where I think you're going to go. Here's what I think you should do, even to some extent. And so, that'll happen several more times as we go on throughout the next few weeks here.
All right. So we introduced this topic a few weeks ago about, I don't know, maybe this is just me being really old and being a fan of the old War Games movie from the 1980s, but I'm going to stick with it until somebody tells me to stop. And maybe that might be Connor, like the next time I bring this up. But so this idea that Nebraska football is associated with the DEFCON level of state of alert.
No, I like this bit, by the way. Let's keep doing this.
Okay. So after Matt Rhule signed his contract extension at the end of October, we returned Nebraska on our little meter that it's over there.
I should get a graphic. We can make a graphic for this and put it up on the screen.
Yeah, that'll be great for our YouTube audience. Nathan, the map maker, if you're listening, can you make us a graphic about DEFCON 1 through 5?
Yeah,
5 is everything as well. All is fine in Husker land. That's DEFCON 5. 1 indicates disaster. So we returned it to 5 when Matt Rhule signed his extension. It was USC week. Nebraska was primed to win that game, or so many people thought, and it looked that way for about a half of football. And then things changed. DEFCON 3 would put you right in the middle, like this is a heightened state of awareness. in military terms, which is what this is based off of, and we're not suggesting that this is akin to war or anything like that, but in military terms, the Air Force is prepared to mobilize in 15 minutes if you're at DEFCON 3. I don't think that's where we're at right now. I'm putting us at DEFCON 4. That's where Nebraska's at. This is heightened awareness. Something is trending in a negative direction. And I think you can see that with the way that the last 2 games went for Nebraska, and then firing the defensive coordinator on the first Monday of the offseason. It could make you shift in either direction toward stability. Rhule's taking action here decisively, or toward instability because there's the realization that he hired the wrong people to begin with. So yeah, DEFCON 4.
I think I said 4 or 3 or somewhere in between. I don't think you could actually do that in war.
No, it's got to be one. You can't be 3.5. No,
but I think I was probably leaning toward 4 the last time we did this, and that was like you said, before the Penn State game, right?
Yeah, I think that's when we did it. Yeah,
things have definitely, like, I'll say this: I don't think the meter. I don't feel like it's any more urgent than it was, or that much more urgent than it was a couple weeks ago,
than before the Penn State game.
But I will say that I personally, like, I believe less. Like, I believe that it's going to work out less. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think the urgency level is as high as it's been. But those last 2 losses definitely did something to me. So I where that all equals out to me, like, and they're going to, there's going to be a reorg and new guys are going to come in on the staff and all that stuff. And you might be dealing with a new quarterback next year. Like that does not say, like, hey, all is well here. So I guess I would have to bump it up. I guess I would have to go to 3.
Yeah. If the next shoe to drop were to be a big key piece, a big cog in the machine for Nebraska to unexpectedly leave. And I'm talking about something more like on the coaching staff than a player. I don't know that any player, your quarterback is the closest one to it, or like if both quarterbacks left, that would get you to DEFCON 3. But like for me, the way to get there would be unexpectedly, like a whoa moment of Mike Eckler or Dana Holgorsen leaving, something like that. That's what it would take to get me to that place. And anything can happen. Like let's stay alert in keeping with the DEFCON world here in December.
So that's what you're saying. Like if one of those people leaves, or you kind of know it when you see it. Then you move it up, and then you go into the war 15-minute mobilization period.
That's DEFCON 3, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. I think we're pretty close.
Okay. I will say this. In moments like this in the past, not exactly like this, but in moments where you were like teetering on the edge of DEFCON 3 in the past, to implement this retroactively. Let's go back to March of 2024 when Trev Alberts left in the middle of the night at Nebraska. Matt Rhule usually in that moment comes out with something impassioned to say.
Yeah.
Either it's like he's going to recite a Paul Harvey speech, maybe. And Matt Rhule's talking today on signing day. So he's going to talk about the 10 signees. He's going to explain why the class was small. He's going to say that he doesn't care about the national rankings and never has, even when Nebraska ranks 10th. He's going to talk about John Butler and say that he did a good job as the defensive coordinator, but Nebraska can have a defensive coordinator who does a great job. This is just me projecting what I think.
No, you're right.
Might come out from Matt Rhule. And then he's probably going to try to inspire the troops. He's going to say something that, because he's had time, like Matt Rhule after a game, like right after a game, Penn State, when the alarm's going off, or even at Iowa, when you're just kind of shell shocked by the end of the season happening like that. It's tough. It's tough for anybody to kind of gather their thoughts. I mean, Mike Elko, the Texas A&M coach, was yelling at people to close the door in the back of the press conference room during his post game after Texas A&M's first loss of the year last week, when they're guaranteed a spot in the playoff. Like, you get on edge after a loss. Now he's had He's had 4 days, 5 days to think about this. And I think he's going to come out with something very organized and, an attempt to inspire people today. And it'll probably work for some. And others are going to say, I don't care what he has to say.
Right.
Like, go win football games.
Yep. Can't for another 9 months. So get prepared.
Well, you got one in a couple weeks.
Oh yeah, I guess they do. The bowl game still is happening.
8 wins, man. 8 wins.
Speaking of bowl games, there are more important ones than whatever Nebraska is going to be in, and that is in the college football playoff. Let's take a brief look at that. Also, we'll check in on day what of the Penn State coaching search after this.
All right, this is the part of the show where if you tuned in to get only like straight at you Nebraska talk, you can just turn it off. This is our show. It's called Locked On Nebraska, but it's really just the Mitch and Connor show. And sometimes we like to talk about things that are happening around college football that do have an impact on Nebraska, because Nebraska does not operate in a vacuum in college football. And
it may not apply to you that the crumble cookies guy went to war with Penn State, to try and keep Kalani Sitake. Like, it might not directly affect you, but you have to at least admit it is entertaining and funny, So like that, this is a topic. This is a great thing that has happened. And Penn State has struck out 400 times on coaches that they've tried to hire.
Pat Kraft, friend of Matt Rhule, got turned down by Kalani Sitake after Kraft got caught up. This is the BYU coach. After Kraft got caught up in a battle against the Mormon Church, and
crumble cookies.
That's crumble cookies.
Crumble cookies. The crumble cookies guy.
I was confused by that.
I have to pay to. It's time for me to step up to the plate, and because I guess it's big in Utah or something like that. And then somebody DoorDashed a delivery to Pat Kraft of crumble cookies yesterday.
No way.
That's it's fantastic.
Based on my observations around the Omaha metro area and the crumble cookies that open in a fast period of time, and the number of them, crumble cookies and what it costs to go into crumble cookies and get a cookie. The crumble cookie guy, you don't want to go up against him in a battle.
He means business
for a coach. You also do not want to go up against the Mormon Church. And when I heard that on Tuesday that BYU was going to the church to get them involved, that was not good. I got to imagine that a little something sunk in the mind and heart of Pat Kraft as soon as that happened. He was hoping to just sneak Kalani Sitake out of Provo, Utah, before anyone noticed who had a direct line to the church and the money that is available there. So Sitake's staying, and much like Kurt Signetti or Matt Rhule or Mike Elko or who knows who else, he's got a lot more money now coming to him. Sitake does, because of what Penn State was up, because of the situation at Penn State. So I hope Sitake sends a nice gift this holiday season to Pat Kraft, like maybe a house or a car or something like that. And I think Kraft is he gonna send him a house? Yeah. Is Kraft gonna have to just hire Terry Smith? Like, is that where they're at now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that
wouldn't be the worst thing. Like, just give him a contract for a year or two and see how it goes.
I mean, you're running out of names. I mean, the word on this was that they were going to try and take this big swing or something like that, and it felt like all the chips were all the eggs were going into the basket of Kalen DeBoer, and that was all hanging on them losing to Auburn, which they almost did, and then maybe they would have been able to do that because he would have got run out of town or whatever, but it didn't work out, and they've pivoted 4 or 5 different times here, at least publicly. I who knows how many names they've entertained behind the scenes, but yeah, if I'm a Penn State fan, I'm incredibly uncomfortable in the 50s of days since this thing started, since they fired James Franklin, who went to the semifinals of the playoff last year. People
It
forget
is stealing Penn State recruits left and right here on Sunday. There's even speculation in the college football coaching community that James Franklin's agent, Jimmy Sexton, the emperor of college football, is steering recruits, because recruits have agents now, and
hilarious.
Sexton is with a big company, steering recruits away from Penn State. Who knows if that's real or not? But just like the appearance of that is awful for Penn State. Day 52 of the search yesterday in State College, so they have like run past the Steve Peterson infamous 41-day search. Now that one was all in the offseason, so there was an expectation that this search was going to get to 47, 48 days, no matter what. But then you thought it would end like right away. It has not. It has not ended. I say at this point, hire Terry Smith. Just do it. Like you struck out. Do you want the coach? What coach that Penn State could hire is really going to feel okay about being choice number 7 or 8?
Yeah, you're almost stuck.
Terry Smith would be okay with that.
I think fine. So, and then if it doesn't work out, you could just go back into the pool in a couple years and have your ducks in a row or whatever.
Give him a contract like Ole Miss did in hiring Pete Golding. It's defensive. Ole Miss handled this well. Ole Miss was like, our coach is leaving. This could be a mess. We're going to be in the college football playoff. We need to keep Lane from stealing our players. Let's just hire the interim or not have an interim. Hire the DC permanently. Let him keep as much of the staff together as we can. Try to win in the college football playoff, win a game or two. And if it doesn't work out with Pete Golding, then in 2027 or 2028, 2026, you regroup and go a different direction.
Yep. And then the playoff rankings came out last night. There really isn't a whole lot of, I get, we like to gin up the controversy, and have the conversations around these things, but I don't know, man. Like, we have most of the spots that are just lock and stock at this point. There could be some changes in ratings depending on what happens this weekend, but the spots are sort of accounted for. And then it comes down to a couple at-large spots right at the tail end of the field, which is what it usually does with, like, say, the 4th spot in a 14 playoff or something like that. Now, there are some things that could go haywire this weekend, with some results that could potentially take place. Like if Duke wins the ACC championship game, then things get a little wacky. And if Texas Tech loses the Big 12 championship game, then, that creates one less at-large spot likely. Texas Tech isn't going to drop all the way out of the rankings, I don't think, at that point. So
no, they're 4 this week. They're safe.
Yeah, right. So you're looking at Notre Dame, Miami, and Alabama, right? Those are the kind of if spots.
They're on the bubble. Yeah. And so here's what I think. This is the main headlines for me after Tuesday night. Texas is out. Vanderbilt is obviously out. Vanderbilt is suing the committee now. The news came out this morning. So why not? Indulge me here quickly in these 3 minutes that we have left. The teams that are unequivocally in: Ohio State, Indiana, Oregon, the Big 12 champ, the SEC champ, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, a G5 champ, which is likely the Tulane North Texas winner, and then another conference champ. It's Virginia, if Virginia wins the ACC. Otherwise, it's either Duke or James Madison. So that's 10 spots that I think, without debate, are settled. If BYU and Alabama win on Saturday in the Big 12 and SEC games, then that's the best case for the scenario for the committee, because then BYU and Alabama are in, and you have a 12-team college football playoff. If the other 2 teams win, which would be Texas Tech and Georgia, then there are 2 spots left for Alabama, which has 3 losses, Notre Dame and Miami. If Texas Tech and Alabama win, then there's 1 spot for Notre Dame or Miami. That's, to me, the second best agent of chaos, because Notre Dame is ranked 2 spots ahead of Miami right now. But with BYU losing, that's the team between Notre Dame and Miami this morning. BYU is no longer between Notre Dame and Miami. They're right next to each other in the rankings. Hunter Yurachek, the chair of the committee, last night said, if 2 teams are right next to each other, we're going head to head. with the determining factor. So Notre Dame and Miami both sitting on the sidelines this weekend. They're in position to move Notre Dame behind Miami and put Notre Dame as the one team that gets in if Texas Tech and Alabama win on Saturday. I look forward, if that happens, to Notre Dame fans completely losing their minds because they get jumped by Miami, which beat them on the last week of the regular season after both teams were off. It's a very realistic possibility. I think it will happen. If BYU and Georgia win on Saturday, then that's peak chaos because there's one spot for Alabama with 3 losses, Notre Dame or Miami. And I honestly don't know in that situation who I even believe the committee would take.
Yeah, the committee backed themselves into a corner on this whole head-to-head matters, but only if they're right next to each other thing. It's
so weird. Go check out Bruce Feldman, my colleague's tweet about that from last night if you want to see something funny. But
they set themselves up for this weeks ago with the whole Notre Dame Miami thing, which is really funny. And so, yeah, we'll see how it works out this weekend. Usually it works itself out. Maybe there's a chance that it does it, but it's funny to me that the angry teams are like, if you're angry today about the rankings, which we always try to like gin up the controversy, like I said, it's the anger levels are between like these teams. A, the team that controls its own destiny still in BYU. What do you really have to be mad about? B, the Miami, the team that lost to SMU and Louisville, who had their chances, and then Texas, who lost to Florida, and Vanderbilt, who lost to the team who lost to Florida, Texas. So
I don't think Vanderbilt has a leg to stand on, and Florida's going to hold this thing up and say we won't even go play Ohio State anymore because if we had played Ohio instead of Ohio State in week 1, we'd be sitting here at 10-2. What will we even be talking about? That's not the reason that Texas is on the outside looking in. Texas is on the outside looking in because it lost to Florida. That's the reason right there. So, be mad, Texas. Like, enjoy it. Welcome to the world that everyone else lives in. Notre Dame fans, to me, are in position to be the most angry because I think the committee has been making up rules as it goes along this season, and Notre Dame is definitely in a vulnerable position when and if the rankings come out next week and they're sitting right next to, and they're potentially sitting right next to Miami, and then Miami all of a sudden leapfrogs them because of the head-to-head.
All right. That'll do it for us today. Thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen. For your second listen, you can check out Locked On Big Ten. I'm sure plenty of reaction to the playoff rankings there. Find it on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.